I always learn a lot from this gentleman, too, best-selling author, historian extraordinaire, Doug Wead, on what he makes of what's going on here. You know, I always know the venue, Doug, the president wants to get that word out all the time. In every speech, in every announcement, in every executive order signing, he reminds people, hey, did you look at the market today? Would it help him, and we discussed this in our last hour, to do it in a more formal setting, to actually make a speech about it, to talk about the markets, to talk about the need for tax cuts, for truly stimulative growth that will help the markets, help them, that he needs, I guess, a sense of bigger order here. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. When we come back from this recess and he's able to kick in and get some legislation, I think it's time for a national address to the nation. I mean, look at the speech he gave in Poland and the speech he gave to the joint sessions that totally flabbergasted the media that was opposed to him. The Democrats didn't know what to do.
You know,
I
agree, Doug. He's very good at it, and yet I bet you smart people like you have advised him, you know, not you, that you specifically, hey, you're good at this stuff, you might as well make this pitch to the nation yourself. So maybe he's chose not to. Is it the fear of maybe owning something that could fail, or what?
It could be, and also the circumstances have changed. We had these great speeches to the nation from, first one was Harry Truman, but Eisenhower gave many speeches to the nations. They'd interrupt all broadcasting. It was something, you know, stay tuned for a word from the President of the United States. But there were only 3 networks. Now people can just switch to Apple TV. But we saw the heart of the President. Obama benefited from these national addresses because his program was very radical, but his spirit and his attitude was very benign and humbled and slow, and it was reassuring to the nation. Nixon was reassuring to the nation because, see, here came a very strategic, efficient personality. I think it helped keep him in power long after some of the Watergate scandal should have thrown him out.
That's interesting. You know, an Oval Office address, too, can help the commander-in-chief become the explainer-in-chief. JFK used charts to champion his tax cuts, hard as it is to imagine, at the time, and Ronald Reagan. 33 Oval Office addresses, a good many of them devoted to economics, at least 3 prominent ones to tax cuts, complete with charts long before Ross Perot. So you could use that as an opportunity to explain the wisdom, as Ronald Reagan would always say, in not giving money to the government, giving it to you, to simplify it. What do you think?
Absolutely, absolutely. The first rule, of course, would be to do no harm, because there was Gerald Ford's whip inflation now that backfired, and there was Jimmy Carter's famous malaise speech. He didn't use the word, but he kind of gave the impression to the American people that it's your fault, and America wanted a leader, which Ronald Reagan followed. But I think this is an arrow in Donald Trump's quiver, and he's got to use it, and he's got to shoot it. He's got a talent for giving these speeches, and I think if it's coordinated with a legislative package telling the people, call your senator, call your congressman, I think it'll work for him.
You know, I don't remember which one, Doug, and I'll defer to you because you know these dates and events better than I do. But I know in one of those tax addresses on the part of Ronald Reagan, there was great suspicion he was going to dial his request back for such a marked cut in rates. And so everyone was tuning in to think, is this the speech where we find out what the president really wants to do? Is he going to wiggle on this? And he didn't. It was still the same across the board, cuts and everything else. A lot of people don't know where Donald Trump stands on the breadth of these tax cuts, whether they should go to everybody, including the rich. We hear rumors about his chief strategist, Steve Bannon, wanting to hike taxes on the super rich, guys like you, Doug. And all of a sudden, people don't know where he stands. I think it could be very beneficial to find out where he's coming from.
Yes, he needs that clarity. You're absolutely right. And he needs to speak to the people over the heads of everyone else. The problem Reagan often had is after his speech, the leftist media would just totally decipher it. It was bracketed by their commentary before and after. But Trump might have a way to get right to the hearts and minds of the people. And this stock market, everybody's talking about why it took off. Part of the reason that Trump's upset about it is the night he was elected, the leftist media was saying, look, the stock market's tanking. This shows
Remember
you
that?
Trump's a bad president. Well, look what's happened.
I remember the moment that we were covering it late here, and obviously the futures were saying that, oh my God, what happened? They're all going, Trump is going to win. And no one bothered to then stick around and say, well, wait a minute. They're coming back now. They're storming back. To say nothing would happen the next day.
Part of the reason is the competition, the free enterprise that he's injected. It's more than what's been discussed. I mean, there are now 4 companies bidding for some of these bids that Boeing had all to themselves. That's creating some competition, and that's creating job opportunities and investment. So there's a lot that's driving this market, more than just the deregulation.
And more than just earnings. And as we say, Doug, and you and I have chatted about, we have so many news channels, 24-hour news networks, several 24-hour business networks. You can get into this. And it's not fair to the president when you only look at the bad stuff. There's a lot of bad stuff. By all means, get that out there. But not to the point where you ignore some of the good stuff. So just balance it out. We in journalism do at the time. Thank you, Doug. Historically fun, as always.